Thursday Thrills.
You ever drive by a wall of trees at night and feel like the darkness is not behind the trees but inside of them? Like the headlights only go so far, and after that, the woods just absorb everything. The road noise, your music, that little voice in your head that says, "Come on, man, it's just trees." That's the thing about the wilderness. It doesn't have to prove anything to you. It doesn't need a ghost in a white dress or a cursed mirror or a demon crawling across the ceiling. Sometimes the scariest thing in the woods can be when they go quiet. And tonight I want to talk about the kinds of stories people bring back from those places. Not polished legends from a book, not official case files. Just the stuff people post online after a hike or a camping trip or a park shift. Because something happened out there and they still don't know what to do with it. Are they all true? Well, I have no idea. That's not really the fun of it. The fun is that they sound like the exact kind of story a friend would tell you at 1 a.m. while the highway is empty and those trees are pressing in on both sides of the car. This is Thursday Thrills, a quick weekly ride into the creepy stories, haunted places, weird obsessions, and eerie little corners of the world worth talking about. I'm your host, Henrique Couto, and tonight, deep woods horror stories, campers, hikers, park rangers, strange people in the dark, animals that sound a little too human, caves that should not have drummers in them, and before we're done, a river monster from North Dakota that you're not supposed to look at in the daylight. So, lock the doors, keep the high beams on, and if the woods suddenly go silent, maybe don't ask why. A lot of wilderness horror starts with one uncomfortable realization. The scariest thing in the forest may not be an animal. It may be another person. One backpacker described being dropped off after dark at the Tecumseh Trail in southern Indiana. There was an old truck nearby, and according to the story, it slowed down while he was getting his gear. He couldn't find good trees at the campsite, so he set up his hammock about 75 feet away, which sounds annoying at first, until later that night. He wakes up to headlights pouring through the trees. People are moving around the campsite. They aren't exactly whispering, but they're not exactly announcing themselves either. And the part that really sticks is the idea that these strangers seem to be looking for the person who had been dropped off there. He wasn't where they expected him to be. He was in the dark, off to the side, hanging, silent, in a hammock. That's the whole story. Nobody jumps out, nobody chases him, but tell me that that is not worse in some way, because the question isn't what happened. The question is what might have happened if he had picked a different spot, an obvious spot. Another camper, this one in West Virginia, told a story that feels like a perfect campfire nightmare. He was deep off the trail with his dog, tucked near a cliff face, far from anything scenic or popular. No water feature, no overlook, no reason for another person to wander right up on him after dark. The dog notices first. That's always how these things go, right? The dog goes alert, then growls. The camper shines his light up at the cliff, and there's a man standing above him, wearing a camouflage poncho, hood up. Not raining, not moving, just watching. He calls out, and the man doesn't answer. He stands there a little longer, then turns and walks away into the dark. That's the whole monster. A man with no explanation, no dialogue, no purpose, and no concern that he's just become somebody else's campfire story for the rest of their lives. And honestly, that may be the reason these stories spread so well. They leave a person-shaped hole in the middle. A bear wants food, a cougar wants distance, a storm wants to be a storm, but a silent man in a poncho on a cliff, well, the woods can keep that explanation to themselves. There's a similar account from a big provincial park where a couple canoes out to an island campsite. The ranger tells them the place is basically empty, which sounds like a dream, until they paddle back one day and see another canoe pulled up on the shore. 3 strangers are going through their campsite, not stealing apparently, just poking around, looking at things. And when the couple gets close, the strangers rush to their canoe, push off, and then sit out on the water, staring back at them. Nothing violent happens, nothing supernatural happens, but I love the detail that they slept with a hatchet in the tent that night, because that is exactly the kind of fear the wilderness manufactures. It doesn't always give you a threat. Sometimes it gives you a question, and then makes you sleep beside it. When we come back, we leave the creepy people behind and get into the really old fear. What happens when the entire forest seems to notice something before you do? What happens when the woods go quiet? If you spend enough time reading camping and hiking stories, one detail shows up again and again. The sudden silence. Not a normal quiet. It's not peaceful. It's the wrong kind. One person described fishing a little lake with a cousin, only about a half a mile from the road. A bright day, with birds and breeze and bluegill. Everything ordinary. Then the woods seemed to just shut off. The birds stopped. The air felt like it stopped too. And after that, they heard footsteps slowly crunching through the trees. That is such a simple image, but it gets under the skin because you can feel the order of operations. First, the world notices. Then, you catch up. And whatever's out there starts walking. Another camper on Vancouver Island described something similar. Frogs had been loud all night, keeping them awake, making it hard to fall asleep even though it was a delightful, natural ambience. Then, suddenly, dead silence. Not for 10 seconds, not for a dramatic movie beat, but for half an hour. Long enough for everyone around the fire to become aware that the silence is now the main guest at camp. People always say it means a predator is nearby. Maybe. Cougars, bears, coyotes, all of that is real and scary enough, but one older woodsman in that same online conversation pushed back on that easy answer. He said sometimes the woods just stop. Everything pauses at once, and nobody knows why. I like that better, honestly. Not because it's more scientific, but because it's creepier. A predator is an answer, sure. The woods deciding to hold its breath is a story. It gets to live. A park ranger in another thread said the most unsettling thing was walking into the woods and hearing absolutely nothing. No bugs, no leaves, no small animal movements, just blackness and stillness. That person had also dealt with coyotes moving strangely near the ranger base, possibly defending a kill. But the detail that really stayed with them was the silence, not the teeth. The silence. And that makes sense. Sound is how the woods tell you it's alive. Bugs, frogs, wind, branches, birds, water, little things scurrying around under the leaves. When all of that drops out, your brain starts filling in the details with whatever it fears the most. Maybe it is a cougar. Maybe it is a bear. Maybe it is some guy standing on a ridge with a poncho over his face. Maybe it's nothing at all, but nothing at all can be terrifying when it has footsteps. The funny thing is, a lot of these wilderness stories do have reasonable explanations. The explanation just doesn't make them less scary. One person working as a park ranger and archaeologist was surveying a rock shelter near a known mountain lion area. They kept getting this primal panic feeling, a raw animal-level alarm going off in their body. They pushed through it, finished the work, moved back and forth across the area, and only later realized they had been walking within a few feet of a mountain lion den. That one gets to me because it suggests your body may know the woods better than your mind does. You're standing there trying to be rational, thinking, why am I so freaked out? And your nervous system is in the back seat screaming because something with claws lives right there, you idiot. It's like evolution is trying to protect us even though we believe we've outgrown it. We don't need that. I mean, we have iPhones. Come on. Another camper in the Badlands told a story that plays like a monster movie until you realize the monster is completely real. He's alone in a tent in the middle of the night when the ground starts shaking every few seconds. He freezes. He thinks earthquake, military test, volcano, end of the world. Finally, he takes off his headphones and hears breathing right outside the tent. Not ghostly breaths, not deep demon breaths, bison breaths. Huge, heavy, animal breathing. The kind attached to a body that can step wrong and erase your whole camping trip from the planet. That is what makes nature so terrifying. The real answer is often worse than the fake one. A ghost might want to scare you. A bison doesn't want anything from you. It just exists, and if you happen to be in the wrong little nylon bag near its hoof, well, that's your problem. There's another little account I really love because it's almost comedy, but the bad kind of comedy where your soul leaves your body. A person in the woods has a deer sneak up right behind them and cough. Deer can make weird noises, almost humanish sounds. And when you're alone and you believe you're the only person nearby, a sudden cough from 2 feet behind you is enough to turn Bambi into a home invader. That may be the purest wilderness horror of all. Nature doing something totally normal, but doing it at the exact wrong distance from your spine. Woods are bad enough. Caves are worse, because caves feel like the earth made hallways and forgot to include mercy. One account from New Zealand starts almost too perfectly. A hiker is alone in the bush listening to a Lovecraft audiobook, complete with chanting and screaming sound effects. That is already quite a choice. Then he decides to camp in a huge old sea cave, the kind of place that used to be close to the ocean and apparently once had people dancing in it on weekends. He sets up at the back of the cave. A guy comes in and says he and some friends are gonna play drums for a little while. Weird, but all right. Caves have great acoustics after all, so that checks out. Then the group comes in, sits in a circle between the camper and the exit, and just stays silent. Then they start screaming, then chanting, then standing in silence, then screaming and laughing, one at a time. Then, after about an hour, they leave. Now, there probably is an explanation, some kind of music practice, group therapy, ritual performance, or a college art thing, whatever, but if you're alone in the back of a cave listening to cosmic horror and a circle of strangers starts screaming between you and the only way out, I don't care how reasonable you are now in a folktale. That's what these accounts keep doing. They take normal human stuff and let the wilderness frame it wrong. A person in a poncho becomes a watcher. A deer cough becomes a stranger. Drummers in a cave become a cult. Silence becomes a warning. And once the woods have framed something wrong, good luck shaking that feeling from your lizard brain. Now, before we pull out of the trees, I want to end with something older than Reddit, because all these modern online accounts are really just the newest version of something people have always done. Come back from the wild and try to explain why it felt alive. Along the Missouri River in North Dakota, there is a legend called Miniwashitu. The story is associated with Mandan tradition, and like a lot of water monster folklore, it turns a dangerous landscape into a creature you can imagine. Winter on that stretch of river could cover the Missouri in heavy ice. Spring did not simply arrive, it had to break its way in, and in the legend, Miniwashitu is the being that does it, a red, buffalo-haired water monster with one eye, one horn, and a jagged backbone like a giant saw. It swims up the river, roaring, breaking the ice open as it goes. At night, you might see it as a streak of red in the water. By day, the warning gets darker. The old version says that seeing Miniwashitu in daylight could drive a person mad or kill them soon after. I love that as a final note for this story because it's not just there's a monster in the river. It's the river has a face, a visage its own, and you are not allowed to look at it. That is wilderness horror in its purest form. Nature is moving, nature is changing seasons, nature is doing something enormous and necessary, and your role, tiny little human, is to keep your eyes to yourself. That is the thread running through all of these stories. The woods, the caves, the rivers, the back county roads. They all seem to have rules. Don't camp in the obvious spot. Don't ignore the dog when it growls. Do not assume silence equates to peace. Do not follow the footprints. Do not laugh at the cough behind you. Do not sleep too deeply in a place where the ground itself can start breathing. And if something red moves under the river ice in daylight, maybe let it pass and look away. Now, before I leave you, remember that most wilderness horror starts with a very simple thought. Something is out there, and the worst part is not knowing whether it's hiding from you or waiting for you.
Come back tomorrow for more fear. Until then, lock your doors, as if that will help.